FPL managers that own a combination of Mateta, Cunha and Isak are in trouble going into game week 28, with all of those being either red carded or injured. In today's video, I'm going to give you an update, best replacements for those players, and a bit of an updated transfer plan for my team as I own both Isak and Cunha. So as always, you look forward to today's video, make sure to drop a like, aim for 400, and of course, if you haven't already, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, let's address the hot topic, which is going to be these three popular forwards and their current status going into game week 28. We have Cunha, we have Alexander Isak, and we have Mateta. So let's kick things off with Wolves' Cunha. We were all buying him in game week 27. He was one of the most bought players, and he is one of the most bought going into this game week. The problem, ended up getting sent off in the FA Cup for violent conduct, and he now is going to miss the next 4 game weeks due to that repercussion against Bournemouth. So that is going to include Everton at home, Southampton away, West Ham at home, and Ipswich away. Now, all you need is to know that he's going to miss the next 2 for enough of a reason to say, you got to sell him. It is not a good position to be in. I'm one of those managers that brought him in for game week 27 because the fixtures are amazing. And of course, he plays in blank game week 29. Not anymore. So if you do own Cunha right now, of all the 3, he is the absolute most priority to sell because we know that he is out for the next 4 games. And as I mentioned, if it was just for the next 2, I still think you have to justify selling him. It is not worth him keeping around in your teams. He'll be back for game week 32. Maybe then we can consider him, but I think I am done with Cunha after that incident. So Cunha is an emergency sell in your teams. We'll come on to some replacements in a minute. Next up, Alexander Isak. Now again, we have had our concerns about him missing in game week 27, which was a big surprise. Coming into game week 28 with their game away against West Ham. Now, in terms of the fixture schedule, the thing that we already knew was that they are going to prioritise the EFL Cup, which I have put here. So they have their game in game week 29. So they go West Ham away, then they got the EFL Cup on Sunday, then they have got Brentford at home, which is going to be basically 2 weeks after the EFL Cup. So whatever happens in the next 2, we would expect Isak to be fit and available for game week 30. Now, the great thing was that in the FA Cup against Brighton, surprisingly, Isak started, scored, but then went off in the 85th minute where we think he was limping off the field. Now, Eddie Howe hasn't really given us any official update. We hopefully will get that before game week 28. My only concern, of course, is that Gordon got red carded, so now Newcastle don't have Gordon going into the final. How are they going to deem the West Ham fixture? Are they looking at it as a priority, or are they going to ask themselves, any sort of injury Isak has, he is going to be rested in preparation for the EFL Cup? I don't really have the answer for you, and I don't think Eddie Howe is going to give us the answer going into the game week 28 deadline. I think if you can keep Isak, that probably is the best route to go for. Then reassess in game week 29 and maybe use him as a cash cow to bring in someone like an Erling Haaland, because bringing Erling Haaland in this week for Isak doesn't make sense having to sell a Salah or a Palmer with their fantastic fixtures. So I think out of all of them, Isak probably is a hold if you can. However, I wouldn't be surprised if he misses game week 28. If you come to the conclusion as well that he does, you're basically having no game in 28, blank in game week 29, and then he's great from 30 onwards. So it is team dependent. I don't mind it if you want to sell him. I'm probably going to wait and see if we get more information before the deadline. And finally, Mateta. Now, this one is the worst of the lot because he got absolutely nailed by the Millwall goalkeeper. For anybody that saw it, it is awful. One of the worst tackles we have seen in a long time. First and foremost, we got to wish the best to Mateta. It sounds like he is now out of hospital, which is fantastic news. So that is the most important thing, player safety. Now we can talk about FPL. In terms of Mateta, we need to understand whether it is going to be a concussion situation. If it is, he will definitely miss game week 28 because the concussion rules miss you have to have a 12-day period of no football. So if that's the case, then he will miss the Ipswich game, which is devastating for those managers that have brought him in and already own him. Now, it's a difficult position to be in. If you're free hitting in game week 29, you just keep Mateta. Hope that he plays in game week 28 if he isn't concussion related. You don't need him in 29, and then you got him for game week 30, 31, and the double in game week 32. Very simple. I think even if it's a case where you own Mateta right now, if he doesn't get completely ruled out for 28, just keep him. And then if he is a doubt, even still, if you can accommodate it and you can get through game week 29. You got him for game week 30, which is a fantastic fixture away against Southampton. So the way I'm going to rank these is this. Cunha is just an absolute sell right now. I think if you can hold Isak for one more week, I would do so, because then I think game week 29, you could use him as a cash cow to bring in an Erling Haaland. And Mateta is absolutely a wait and see. If he gets ruled out for concussion, then I do think you can sell him with an eye to bring him back in. But the question mark is, if you're free hitting in 29, I probably would then keep him. Any questions on these three players, please do put them in the comment section. I will address the best replacements later, and of course what I plan with doing them in my own teams. So now that we determined that Cunha is just an absolute sell for our teams, who are the best replacements? And I think there are lots. So we are going to cover off these three on your screens here, as well as discussing a few others. And I will touch on a couple more when we come to my team, as of course I do own a few of the alternatives out there. But the three that I want to pinpoint right now are going to include Everton's Beto, Nottingham Forest's Chris Wood, and of course Man City's Marmoush, because I think they all offer interesting alternatives to Cunha. So first and foremost, all three of these allow you to play them in blank game week 29. They all have a fixture, and I think all the fixtures are actually okay. They're not bad fixtures at all in game week 29. So first up, let's talk about Beto. Now, difficult to come to any conclusions on him because the underlying numbers are great. You can see him here, 1.31 big chances per 90, 0.61 expected goals per 90, but the minutes have been very, very minimal. Only plays 750 minutes this season, so we cannot compare this to somebody like a Chris Wood, because Chris Wood has done it for pretty much every single game week. We are looking at isolated minutes of Beto under the ownership, under the management of Moyes. Incredibly difficult to come to any conclusions. But what we do know is that he's guaranteed starter. He is getting big chances in this current Moyes system. And the fixtures coming up include Wolves away, which I don't think is terrible, and then West Ham at home in game week 29, where I think West Ham have been better defensively under Potter, but I still think that this is a fixture that can be attacked. Then it's worth noting, Beto either then has to be benched or sold on a wild card in game week 31. So he's actually pretty good, but I would bench him in game week 30. So you need to make sure your teams can accommodate Beto for that week. Otherwise, I think we can keep the cash at the same price point of Cunha and go to someone like a Wood or a Marmoush. Now, let's talk about Chris Wood first and foremost, because I just got to put my cards on the table here. If you want a safe pick, just go Chris Wood. Don't even overthink it. His ownership is massive. It's going to be massive in game week 29 because those that are free hitting are just guaranteed to put Chris Wood in, especially with this now Cunha ban. It's just kind of locked people into a combination of Chris Wood and Haaland up top. And I think the fixtures are great. Game week 28 at home against Man City is not a fixture you should be worried about from an attacking perspective. I still think there are opportunities for this Forest team, even though they have been a little bit indifferent in the last couple of game weeks. Then they have Ipswich away, which again, I think is a good fixture. And game week 30 as well, I think is really good at home against Man United. So even though they have the two Manchester clubs, I think the next three are great for Chris Wood. And then, as I mentioned, if you're on a chip strategy of maybe wildcarding in game week 31, then that's absolutely fine. But is it a concern if you have to hold on to Chris Wood beyond this point? I don't think it is. So I think Chris Wood kind of ticks all the boxes. Ownership pick, great underlying numbers you can see here, and importantly, the fixtures are good enough. I think the real edge pick is going to be Marmoush at 7.2 million. Now, the same price point as Chris Wood, so you are taking a slight risk where you could just go for the safe pick in Chris Wood. Again, I can't come to any conclusions with Marmoush because the numbers are up against 373 minutes played. I mean, who can come to judgments with that? 0.25 expected goals per 90. I mean, I don't want to read too much into this. What I want to look at is the fixtures. Now, again, we don't have any Champions League for Man City. They have been eliminated, so it's basically just the Premier League and the FA Cup for them. Nottingham Forest away in game week 28 does not feel like a fantastic entry point. I know Arsenal have been awful offensively over the last few weeks, but Forest kept them to a clean sheet. I think Forest at home are good. Wouldn't be surprised if Forest were to minimise the attack of Man City. However, game week 29 and game week 30 are fantastic. And it does feel like the entry point for someone like a Marmoush or a Man City attacker is actually in game week 29, not game week 28. So my personal opinion is it's safe, it's boring, but if you own Cunha and we're looking for a definite sell and you don't need the funds to go down somewhere like a Beto, I think Chris Wood is just a really easy sideways move. It's so damn boring, but I think it just makes sense with those next 3 fixtures coming up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I am going to cover off Vissa and that when we come to my personal team because I do already own him. So as I mentioned with my team, I have a bit of a problem where I own Cunha and I own Alexander Isak and I am not free hitting in game week 29. So there are problems with my team. I only got 1 free transfer available now. So I really want to give you guys a first idea on how I might try and bring in somebody like an Erling Haaland that is being discussed and what I plan on doing with this team. So firstly, it's worth noting that I could, if I wanted to, just keep the team as it is. I think managers need to understand that that is an option. You don't have to desperately sell players in a game week if you don't feel like it is the right time. The reason why I'm saying that is if you're of the opinion that you want to bring in someone like an Erling Haaland to free up the funds, game week 28 does not make any sense to do that because Haaland is away against Forest and your cash cows are in the shape of Cole Palmer or Mo Salah. You ain't selling either of those with the home fixtures that they have. So game week 29 is the week where if you're going to make that move, you need to do it then. So with my team, the problem is if Alexander Isak actually doesn't play in the game week, I'll have Semenyo come in for him. But then if Cunha, of course, doesn't play, which we know already, I then am looking at Mykolenko coming in for my team. And I just don't think it makes a lot of sense doing so. So I think for game week 28, for my team, the priority, as I've discussed in the video, is bringing in a Cunha replacement, and that is going to be in the shape of Chris Wood. Now, again, I might come to the conclusion that I'm just going to let these 2 players rot in my team, allow my auto subs to come in, and then reassess in game week 29. But I feel like my team is in a lot of trouble. I might as well just take a points hit where it is required. So game week 28, this will be the team. And Semenyo would come in for Alexander Isak if he was then ruled out for game week 28. Now, the problem with this is that if I deem Alexander Isak a massive risk for game week 28, do I just sell him in game week 28? That is the big issue I have, because once we come into game week 29, I find it very difficult not to have Erling Haaland in this team. And the only way I can really do it is by selling Alexander Isak to Erling Haaland. But as you can see, that then means I got to free up 5.6 million in this team. Now, the big debate right now is which one of Palmer or Salah to sell. You can see the Palmer fixtures here. Arsenal away just feels like a great time to sell him. But then they got Spurs at home, Brentford away, and Ipswich at home, which are really good 3 fixtures afterwards. The problem, Mo Salah doesn't have a game in game week 29, so that feels like a really obvious sell because he doesn't have a game. But then he has Everton at home, Fulham away, West Ham at home, Leicester away, and it's worth noting he is currently the best ever FPL option. So Everton at home is a tricky-ish game, but would we be surprised if he scored in that game? Absolutely not. So we need to understand what we can do with the money available. So let's say we went and sold Cole Palmer. It would allow me 5.4 million in the bank. Now, with the current strategy that I have of wildcarding in game week 31, if we come down to the fixtures here provided by Planet FPL on fpl.team, I'm looking at game week 29 and game week 30 as my fixtures in isolation and which players actually offer value. And the ones that I'm drawn to straight away are Bournemouth, but I've already got double midfield. I'm not too interested in that. Man City, but at that price, I can't get to any midfielders. Then, of course, the alternatives include Nottingham Forest. Somebody like an Alanga does make a lot of sense for my team. Otherwise, I don't think there are any other alternatives. So, by default, I would be looking at somebody like an Alanga as an alternative, which I'm not too fussed about at all, as he is a really good player to put on the bench in future weeks. The downside of my team is that I am kind of relying on some people who are maybe risks, like a Vandenberg, who is currently red flagged. So I could be going into this game week with a -4 and Vandenberg playing. Not a good spot to be in, but it allows me to have the best captain this game week. And then coming into game week 30, I still have Mo Salah on my team, which I think is really important. And I have people like Trent who have fantastic fixtures. And all of a sudden, the team looks like this for game week 30, 1 week before wildcard and in game week 31. So I think that is my current strategy right now. Just accepting that it's not great in game week 28, but Cunha is an immediate sell. Bringing in Chris Wood for this game week, allowing me to keep Isak to understand whether he has a fixture in game week 28 or not. Then using him as a cash cow in game week 29 to get rid of him. not having Isak in game week 30, knowing that in game week 31, I will wildcard him back into my team. It's not a great spot, but sometimes when you get dealt terrible cards, you do just have to suck it up, address the situation, and be done with it. I want to say, if we get a situation where maybe Isak is ruled out for game week 28, this is where the problem arises, because if I deem Erling Haaland essential, but I also feel like I need to sell Alexander Isak to capitalize on, owning players. The problem, this is the issue. If I can get to Erling Haaland, I got to sell with 5.3 million players in this team that maybe I don't want to get rid of. So that's going to include maybe doing Salah out this week. Absolutely not. Cole Palmer out this week. No. I could maybe do something like this, where I do Cunha down to Beto, and I still need to free up 3.8. And as you can see, it doesn't work in my team. Hence why I think keeping Isak for one more week just makes a lot of sense for my team. Yes, guys, that's going to wrap up today's video, taking a look at those injury updates and, of course, my updated transfer plans. It looks like I will be selling Cunha, and Chris Wood looks like the likely replacement. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the comment section. I'll be sure to get to them over the next 24 hours. And, of course, if you haven't already, make sure to drop a like on the video and hit that subscribe button. I will see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.